Hi, I'm Chris from Development. Let's talk quickly about how we can use the application scope that was introduced in Coronium Core 2.1. The application scope basically lets you use Coronium Core Server with multiple applications or games built with Corona. And what this does is this lets you have different users and different metrics collected depending upon the application. So to set this up, under the client guide now there is a section under the initialization called application scope, which talks briefly about how the application scope works. And there now is a new key that can be entered into the initialization method of the Coronium Core plugin on the client side. So let's take a look at how this works. We're going to jump over to the code here. And here in my, this is just a basic Coronium project, I have a new key that I can put in called scope. And here you can just place a unique and simple name for this application that you would like to use to kind of quarantine off your users and metrics. So in this case I've used this one, space race is what I'm calling this one. So from here on out, any users or metrics that I collect are all going to be scoped to this space race application. Now if we go into the Webmin, and this is a fresh install of Coronium Core with the Webmin, it won't give us much information because there isn't really anything that's been collected yet so far. Now the application scope pretty much only refers to things that fall into the applications category, which is the opens, the users, and then the device statistics. If you don't have any scopes set up yet, when you enter any of these sections you're going to be told that there were no application scopes found. So that's what this message will be telling you. Once to actually get an application scope into the Webmin system, you have to run at least one of the methods that utilize an application scope. So for instance, an analytics method or any of the user methods, once you run one of those once, then the scope will then be entered into the Webmin. So to show an example of that, we can just simply use the Core Analytics app opened, which collects some information for us, and then once we run this, this is going to be scoped again to the space race application that we've set up here. So I'm going to go ahead in Corona and I'm doing a refresh, and the app opened doesn't give us any response, so that's that. And now if we return back into our Webmin here, you'll see that we have some new information now here on our today screen. But to actually get the new scope to show up in our Webmin, we're going to have to give it a refresh since that's the first time it's been used. Now you'll notice that up here now we have a menu that is called Application Scope, and it's a drop down, and let's choose the scope that we're working in. Now I'm going to go ahead and just for kicks, we're going to go back into the code and I'm going to create another scope. We'll just pretend this is a new application. We'll call this Fun Run, and I'll go ahead and run an app opened on that as well in Corona. I'm refreshing, and then back in the Webmin here I'm going to need to go ahead and refresh so that it updates my application scopes, and now I can see that I have a Fun Run scope and Space Race scope. And again, whether you choose any scope you choose really only has an effect on the items here in the application section. So on the today screen though, which is this new front page here, it'll collect these metrics for us and start to break them down by the application. So you can see that the scope here, I have Fun Run and Space Race. These are the application opens, and I can track those for this current day. This just gives you a quick overview as the day goes by of what's going on. There's no logins or joins yet. So right now in my Corona application I'm using Fun Run, so if I went ahead and refresh that project, I'm going to get a new app opened on that, and then I can see that in my Coronium Core here now that I open up On my Today screen, I can see that now I have two app opens on Fun Run and Space Race. And again, if I wanted to just add another one just to keep showing the different statistics, we can add a new one in here, and we'll just call this one Hopper, and I will do a refresh on that, and then refresh here, and now we can see that we're getting all of these different scopes, getting metrics for those scopes. And again, we can select those up here in the drop down menu. Now where this becomes most useful is in the application section here. So if I go to my opens, right now these are opens that are scoped to Space Race, because that's the one I have selected now, so we can see what those opens are. If I wanted to jump over to Fun Run and look at those statistics, I can just select it from the application scope, and we can see that there have been two app opens for the Fun Run. For Space Race, which we've just looked at, for Hopper, only one. So that's how you jump between scopes and be able to see the different metrics and things like that for your app opens. And this also holds true for the device metrics as well, even though we're just doing it here on the desktop, so we don't have much information, but these are statistics that are specific to app opens for the Hopper application. If I wanted to see statistics specific to Fun Run, then I can just select that, and these would be specific to that. And then the same holds true for the users as well, but at this time we don't have any kind of metrics or users that is created for that. So let's go ahead and create a user. We're going to go back into let's say Space Race, and we will create a user. So we'll do core.users.create. I'm just going to create a simple user here, so username equals Jim, and password will be 1234. I'm going to add, actually I'm going to move this down here underneath my response handler. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my response handler to this. So now I can go ahead and in Space Race create this new user. I get the standard result, which is that user's ID. I'm in Fun Run right now, but if I jump over to Space Race, I should have a new active user now in here, and I can see that this user has been created in this specific scope of Space Race. You can see also too on the user's details the key scope, which will show that there are indeed belong to the Space Race scope. Because we have no users anywhere else, if I jump back over to Fun Run here, you can see that I don't have any active users there. And this holds true for the pending and the inactive as well, so that shows the statistics for that. If I'm in Space Race again here, I can see down here on my charts that I also have a join. If I log that user in as well, then I should get a statistic for that. So let's just do a login here, and we'll log in Jim on Space Race scope, and they've been logged in. So I can again jump over here, and I'll just refresh this, and I can see that I have logins, and also to my chart here will start to show the logins for that as well. Again, if I go now to my Today screen, I should have some metrics collected now. These are my opens here for the logins. There's only been logins for Space Race so far, and joins for Space Race so far. And those would fill up as we used different application scopes. So that's pretty much how that works as far as being able to scope different things out. Now in the case of Space Race, I have this one user named Jim. Now if I wanted to have another user named Jim in a different scope, I can do that now, because I can simply just, if I was in say another application, Fun Run, I can actually go ahead and create a user with the same name, which you can't do within the same scope. And then once I create that user, then now I'll have a user not only in Space Race as Jim, but if I jump over to Fun Run, then now I also have a user named Jim in Fun Run. Now if I was to add one more user here to fun run, let's go ahead and add Pam, and we'll refresh that there, and then we can take a look at that again. So now I have Pam in fun run, but if I go over to Space Race, Pam doesn't exist in that user scope. So if I was in Corona and I was in the wrong scope, let's say I'm in Space Race, and I try to log in Pam, I'm not going to be able to do that because Pam does not belong in that scope, so I get no user found. So that's basically how you work with scopes. Once you have it set up, then anything that you do using the users methods or the analytics app opened, those will be basically scoped to whatever key that you name that you pass here to the scope key. One important thing is that you want to kind of decide on a scope for your application and keep it that way, because if you do change it after the fact, then you'll lose those associations for those statistics and those users. Now this can be advantageous in one use case. If you do know that you want to share users across multiple applications with the same login and username, then you can simply just use the same scope for different applications, and so that may be a specific use case. But in general, you'll want to have a unique name for each of these. Coronium Core has no way of knowing if you're trying to use a new scope with a different application, so it's up to you to make sure that you keep those names unique. But again, if you did want to utilize that in a way where you can have multiple applications that all use the same user base, then you can just simply pass in that same scope there. So that's pretty much how scopes work. Again, once you add a scope, if you don't see it in your drop down here, you just give your Webmin a refresh, and you'll be able to see it there, and then you can select the different scopes and you'll be able to see your different metrics there. And these also do again show up on the home screen to kind of give you a quick overview of some of the different things that are going on in your application scopes. And these stats are just for the day. Once the day is over, then these will all refresh back to 0 again, and you'll need to get all those other that information that's collected over the week and month through these areas here. So that pretty much explains how to use the application scopes in your Coronium apps. The scope key is actually now a required key in the core init, so make sure that you include that. And that pretty much settles that. Thanks for watching.